Check one. You all good? Hey everyone, I'm Ty Tinker. I direct analytics at AdQuick. AdQuick is a leading research team and has developed a product for the exchange of out-of-home. We have dived deep into our own data and produced some new insights this year. After last year, we proved that out-of-home is winning in the MMM space. I'm a data scientist by trade. I was building machine learning models before I joined AdQuick to try and understand the effectiveness and efficacy of out-of-home. I love the AdQuick team because they amassed a ton of data for me to play with, and I've been doing that over the past year, and I'm going to share a few insights today and talk about how out-of-home measurement can scale investment through trust. Not the most sexy title, I apologize, but we're going to dive into the data, so hopefully that helps. So last year we presented this demonstration. We had a client that invested into out-of-home enough to reach saturation in a few key markets. And we submitted their data through our measurement tools. We analyzed their level of exposure, their level of reach through mobile location data and some partnerships, and submitted daily exposure data to a greater MMM model. We partnered with TransUnion to understand whether or not out-of-home was a key driver, a causal factor in driving lift for this client's sales. And what we found was out-of-home, in fact, was a key driver, and for every dollar invested into out-of-home, they received a return of $2.49. It's a 249% return, just on one out-of-home campaign. But you'll also notice that out-of-home sat at about 2% of their media mix. This client in particular made the decision to invest quite a bit more into out-of-home as a result of these insights. And these weren't produced by AdQuick. These weren't produced by any of the great vendors we had on the campaign. They were produced by a third party. So these are very truthful to the client. But I'm going to take a step back for a second and talk about something that's important to me, which is the essence of good advertising. I think Joe Sugarman put it well. Joe Sugarman wrote ad copy for objects that were seemingly boring and became very, very interesting through a few words. He wrote, "You should always first express whatever product or service you're selling in a print direct response ad, because it's in this format that you can develop the real essence of your product or service. You only get a few words with print ads. You don't get the flashing lights. You don't get a lot of the sound or any of the appeal of the medium. You only get a few keywords." And this is paralleled in measurement. So there's me. All right, that went better than I thought it would. Okay. You should always first express whatever it is that you plan on measuring in an advertisement investment. This is the strategy which, from my experience, has been lacking in out-of-home. Advertisers think first. They can't measure out-of-home. Then they work with AdQuick. They work with Reveal Mobile. They work with other measurement partners in the space, TransUnion, omni-channel partners, and realize, okay, it's measurable. That's great. But now what are we gonna try and measure? And once that question is answered, all of a sudden that 2% of media starts to lean into 5% because no longer is it a play or an experiment or a test. It's actually an execution. It's a business objective. I told you it wasn't going to be that interesting, but this is really what drives investment up. So, what have we seen? Well, our internal data across thousands of campaigns has shown us that in the past year, since I spoke last year here at DPAA, we've seen a 4.85x multiple of campaigns with measurement. 64% of our campaigns in 2025 were measured. That's a total, that's a global number. That's every campaign we've run. 64% are getting measured. And talk about outcomes and investment. For every campaign that was measured, we saw 1.79x lift in investment into media, not into measurement. So what did we learn? Well, There's a lot going on in this, and I realize now it's kind of small text, so I'm just going to summarize a little bit more here. What do? We approach this with a full funnel measurement mindset. We establish business objectives. This is built into AdQuick's SLAs, and it works with clients. This is what incentivizes them to measure and thus to build trust, is we establish ahead of time, what are you trying to do? I think, when working with marketers, we understand that sometimes those objectives can be very, very singular, or they can be broad. That's fine. What do you want to measure? So we provide a vast set of measurement tools, brand lift surveys, reaching out to individuals, doing interviews, and assessing whether or not their exposure to out-of-home drove some sort of change in perception. I'll share a case study which exemplifies this. Web footfall app and audience attribution. Reveal mentioned earlier that they're doing sales attribution, which is awesome, very similar, except it's across the entire potential network of device IDs with web, footfall, and app as well. But then we bake in causal inference, which abstracts all of the data away and just asks, did your sales go up relative to a predicted model of what they would have been? Just focus on one key aspect. We also provide search lift, omnichannel lift. I won't dive into all of this. But the idea here is to measure everything that was assessed as a business objective prior to the start of the campaign. This isn't a novel concept. I'm not necessarily bringing anything new to the table here. While the products may be very interesting, this is not a new idea. It's been around for hundreds of years. But implementation is where things get tricky. So let's talk about a case study, which was tricky. AdQuick ran a global campaign across 27 markets with 27,000 assets for a single advertiser spanning over 14 months, which operationally incredible that the team at AdQuick was able to execute. Not as incredible, but a serious challenge was also, how do we measure this? Do we just, track whether or not the campaign received impressions? Is that going to be good enough to incentivize future investment? No. So what did we do? We did brand lift studies. We ran, I don't have the number here, but I think it was over 24 independent brand lift studies, and established a global benchmark that we referenced against in quarterly business reviews with the client. We found that overall there was a 9% average lift in brand familiarity, a 6.3% average lift in duplicate there, but that's supposed to be brand preference, and then a 4.1% lift. These are metrics which we were only able to provide based on that benchmarking data we established over the course of the campaign. But it's not just these large national global campaigns that are important here. We want to be able to provide measurement at any scale. So how do we do this? Well, it starts with having a lot of data. One of the most important things in machine learning model is having high precision. High precision can't be achieved unless you have vast amounts of data to measure very, very, very small changes in outcomes. So for a brand, this might be, I want to drive my sales, I want to drive my call volume up by 10%. And maybe they get 100 calls a month. So that's an extra 10 calls. That's very precise, but can only be measured if you have thousands of data points across more and more campaigns. So this is what AdQuick is trying to bring to the table, is a more global benchmark and a standard that you can reference against as a way not just to sell out of home, but to prove that it's working for individuals, for smaller clients. With our range of campaigns, I mentioned before, we have 64% measured. That's only continuing to increase because we're enabling measurement for the long tail. In addition, I won't harp on AI, but AdQuick has already built AI and integrated it into its systems, and it takes the form of campaign recommendations. We have a full-scale campaign builder that's just based on a text prompt. It's based on whether or not the assets in that particular market of interest are effective and drivers of performance based on that global benchmark. We can generate creatives and optimize against audiences. It's very interesting. It's fun. It's exciting. But it's also based on effectiveness. And the last thing here is we're doing measurement verification and attribution as well. We have automated ad play verification for digital out-of-home. We announced our partnership with Veridu just, I think, less than 48 hours ago. Jason can check me on that, but very recently, very exciting stuff there, giving us extreme insights into highly precise metrics, whether or not an ad was played or not. This helps us determine the level of exposure to a campaign and thus develop these benchmarks that I'm referring to. We have unified reporting for exposure, audience reach, and attribution. This updates on a daily basis, giving teams insights into their campaigns as they're happening and insights into their outcomes as they're occurring on an ad recall window. We actually recently, not mentioned here, but recently integrated these exposure and conversion insights directly into a full-scale marketing attribution dashboard on the client side. They tapped into our API and are seeing out-of-home insights in line with their spend across digital, with their spend across CTV, and other channels that they're running actively. This is how we get into the head of the decision makers. I work with these teams. These are the data scientists. These are the modelers. These are the folks who are really looking to say, where should we allocate investment this year? And what proof points do we have to reinvest? And what we found, which should be good news, is out-of-home is still unbeaten. We've worked with every single one of these partners on omni-channel measurement for out-of-home compared against other channels, and what we found is out-of-home consistently outperforms. This is probably no surprise to anybody in this room, but it is a surprise to advertisers when it works. And we need this to be ubiquitous in order to prove that there is still quite a few optimizations that could be made. I think the reality that I want to share and wrap up with is there are some incredible things that I've seen today happening in our space. And I want those things to be highlighted, those exciting activations, those powerful movements, those new ideas. Those are driving lift, whether you like it or not. They are doing things for the businesses or for the groups that are incorporating them. But without that measurement, without that proof point, it's hard to continue to innovate in that way. So that's a challenge, but we have plenty of measurement and plenty of options. So if you'd like to try this measurement, full funnel, full stack, please give that a scan. I can't promise where it goes, but I think it's just a Google form. So thank you.